Did Islamic finance markets behave differently during the COVID-19 pandemic? Are they more resilient in times of crisis? In today's session, we'll explore how Islamic and conventional economies respond to uncertainty. Welcome to CF Talk Podcast, a place to learn and explore through conversations in Islamic and ethical finance with experts from all over the world. Stay tuned as we dive in the fascinating world of finance together.
Good morning and welcome to everyone connecting, seeing us live today in another session of CF Talks. Thank you for being with us today. And we have a special guest today. Is Professor Edib Smolo. He's an expert on Islamic finance and professor at IFAT University in Saudi Arabia. So good morning, Professor Edib. And
morning to you, Jose. Nice to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Edib, I was reading one of your latest articles that you published talking about the reaction and the behavior of Islamic financial markets during pandemic. And I found it really interesting because, I think COVID, even that happened recently, it's something that we all want to put behind us. But at the same time, I think it's perfect situation to experiment and to see how many different behaviors in our society took place, right? Not only economic or financial, but in many different aspects. So I wanted to ask you, to what extent do you think that this situation, this pandemic, was like a stress test to the markets, and that can help us to foresee the current economic scenario or even future crisis?
Yeah, thank you very much again for having me, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever our listeners and followers are. It's really a pleasure to discuss this topic, and it's interesting. One of the first paper that I wrote was on the global financial crisis, and now we have COVID-19, which is another sort of shock. So, it's good to mention here, what Winston Churchill, after the Second World War, said, when they were trying to establish United Nations institution, he said, the leaders should never let the good crisis go to waste, right? So both global financial crisis and, COVID-19, or global health crisis, as we call it in our paper, they offer both the challenges and opportunities, not only for the Islamic financial industry, but for as you said, for the overall global economy and finance and all the industries that we have. Now, what is key is that, in my personal view, and looking back to the global financial crisis, and for this COVID-19, we don't know yet the full extent and the effect. So we'll have to wait for some time, right, to get the real results. But, it seems that we didn't really learn much from the global financial crisis as we continue to do the things very much the same way. And as you can see right now, what we have with the Credit Suisse, with the Silicon Valley Bank, all these failures or bankruptcies that are going on, I think they are results of not learning the lessons from the global financial crisis. Mm-hmm. Now, COVID-19 is different, right? But yet, we need to take into consideration that one and try to learn it. So one way, some things that we really need to focus on, I would say, is that, we need to use this opportunity to do the proper research and identify systemic weaknesses that we have in our system, both from financial to the other aspects of the global world, right? So global economic system, we need to see what are the areas where financial institutions, supply chain, government policies were ill prepared to handle these shocks. So when we analyze these weaknesses, we will be able to maybe strengthen and make our system more robust to the future vulnerabilities. At the same time, we need resilience, right? We need to assess the resilience of our system, financial and other, as I said, regardless if it's Islamic or non-Islamic at the moment. So we need to see the ability of the businesses, financial institutions, and the government, how they can withstand these kind of disruptions, right? Because once we analyze this one and we learn, we will be able to, foresee and prepare ourselves for the future crisis that might happen, and definitely looking at the current, economic conditions globally, right? And things that are happening, we will need it. We will definitely need it. So
Absolutely.
better prepared to as soon as possible. Next one is, of course, the policy adjustment, right? Many policies were not in place. Like we were living like nothing's going to happen. Like, so we were like trying to, reinvent the wheel suddenly once under the pressure. And of course, I mean, to some extent, we did a good job. But imagine that we had these policies in place prior to the financial crisis, prior to the COVID-19 health crisis, it would be much better, and responses and results, I would say, would be much better. Risk management and contingency planning is another thing that we need focus, especially from the, financial institutions' point of view. But I mean, not excluding, of course, the government, because they are having the risks as well, and due to these shocks that are happening. One interesting thing that is a result of the global COVID-19, I would say, is the digital transformation, right? We all witnessed the huge expansion of these areas, sectors, including the financial world and financial industries. So we need to see, to some extent, we need to also review and see to what extent they are affecting, what are the risks involved in these industries, improve them, and make sure that, next time we already have everything set up in place. I would say that digital transformation to some extent was extended by the global COVID health crisis, right? But at the same time, it is something that, helped us, to great extent. And one significant, result of the COVID also showed the global cooperation and coordination and importance of this one, right? Without this cooperation, coordination, I think that the effects of the COVID-19 would be much worse. But nevertheless, this shows that, at the end of the day, this is a global village, right? We are living in the very, very much connected East. I mean, even the studies that we are looking at are revealing these things. So we need to really focus on these things and try to learn. Of course, there are many other things, but I think that these are the more crucial points that we need to focus on. But as I said, we need a thorough analysis to draw all the lessons from COVID-19. And of course, it is too early, the results of all the policy that we have done during the COVID-19, the results or the real effect might be taking place. Like we have, in financial analysis, right? We have the lags that, it will only result maybe in years to come. So I guess that at the moment it's still too early to come with the final conclusion. We have certain conclusion, but not the full picture that we need.
Very interesting. Yeah. Absolutely. I think, and unfortunately, in economics, I think we always learn lessons a bit late after the crisis happened, right? But
reactive, yes.
But so tell us a bit more about what you have observed, analyzing the behaviors of these different Islamic financial markets. We don't have a lot of time to discuss it in depth, the article. We can share it with our community later. But if you can tell us a bit in some bullet points, the main conclusions.
Exactly. So I'll just brief overview. Basically, the idea was we tried to look at the effect of the global financial crisis on the systemically important Islamic financial markets. And systemically important financial markets are those that are identified by IFSB, Islamic Financial Services Board report, of those that are having 15% and more of the domestic banking sector assets, right? So there are 15, if I'm not mistaken, countries that are, having this kind of shares, but we focused only on the 8 countries, in particular, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Kuwait, Malaysia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and UAE. The reason is because of the availability of the data, because of their shares and their general impact on the market. Now, of course, like I said, to some extent, it is also interesting because the results are showing that the Islamic financial industry is also growing at a double digit despite the COVID-19, right? Oh. So obviously there is something that is going on. And so what are the advantages or disadvantages we wanted to see? Most of the studies were focusing on conventional. Even another study that we had, was focusing on the conventional or the BRICS countries. But this one we try to focus only on the Islamic countries because of their shares, to see how they behave during the COVID-19. So this paper, as we said, we cannot go into detail, but it's available. It's freely available on the Helion journal. So it's everyone can download it and read it in details. But basically, the main conclusions that we can draw is that the Turkey, Bahrain, and Kuwait, they had the highest unconditional volatilities, which is to some extent understandable given the Turkey's market that is going through these shocks and an economic sort of crisis, right? The lowest one were in Malaysia, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. At the same time, the correlation between these countries is the mostly concentrated around the Middle Eastern countries, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, UAE and Saudi Arabia, and UAE and Kuwait, which is again understandable because of the close proximity of these markets and sharing similar policies and similar environments and so on. Now, what happened is that the main results basically shows that there is a limited correlation among these markets, which basically the effect of COVID-19 was relatively short timed, right? So it had effect on these sample markets, but it faded very soon, indicating that these equity markets carry sort of hedging features and offer portfolio diversification for the investors. However, they are less correlated during the sample period than expected, right? Which also shows, that there is a possibility of, diversifying portfolios when it comes to the investment in these countries, right? So this is very much important for the policymakers, for the diverse investors deciding on portfolio diversification. These markets, according to our study, due to this Islamic indices that they have, right, which is again related to the principles that on which they are based and Sharia screening, offer some benefits to the investors. So if the investors, regardless Islamic or non-Islamic, want to diversify the portfolio, this would be good area to explore. However, of course, we need to be careful in the sense. We are basically careful on interpreting the results. We use the US dollars, right? All the values are in US dollars, which may be a little bit affect the results may be affected if we use the local currencies, especially given the Turkey and the devalue of the Turkish lira that is happening, in last year or two, right? So this is the brief grasp of the findings that we had found in our paper.
Very, very interesting. I mean, and the fact that they are not so correlated between each other, it's interesting because they are very similar. Or at least to the Western world, they seem like very similar economies many times,
Indeed,
right?
Indeed, but this is exactly like the real value of this study that that can provide to the investors and policymakers in general.
Great, good. And I know that it's still early to talk, but I want to ask you as well this question now. Now we are living in a current situation of after COVID. That it's every day is ups and downs, right? Except for inflation, that is only up. Let's say that for the last 2 years. But I know it's early, and there's other studies needed to be done in order to respond this question in a better way. But looking at the current situation and with higher volatility, inflation, how do you envision that the Islamic finance markets could react compared to conventional peers, or what are you observing right now?
To be honest with you, maybe the other Islamic financial scholars and professionals may not completely agree with me, but in my opinion, the reaction would not be much different for a number of reasons. One of them is that these markets are still dominated by the conventional finance, right? So all the regulatory policies, all the central bank government are pretty much, inclined towards the conventional finance and all the theories that are applied there. So what happens is that, if you can compare it to the law of one price, right? So these markets, Islamic financial institutions are sharing small portion of the market. So they are sort of price takers, right? So whatever happens in the market is basically led by the big guys, big corporations, big financial institutions, big financial institutions in those countries, which are primarily dominated by the conventional finance. So in that sense, these markets, I don't think that they will make significant change unless they do within their own scope, which is again the limited impact, and it's very much difficult to value that one. The second reason I would say why I don't expect like much different is reaction is again that in my personal view again the true nature of Islamic finance is still not existent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean I'm trying sometimes to explain to the people what that means, right? Is that we have that conventional finance which I can define maybe as a ball, right? As a circle, right? Which has its border, it has its rules of the games. Now we have Islamic finance which is more as a square. Now fitting the square into the circle is not really working very well, right? So we need to adjust. So this is Islamic finance. I mean, I'm not complaining, right? We are doing the best what we can, but that's the reason what I'm saying, like, we are still like, adjusting ourselves to fit within the global market or the financial arena that has its own rules of the games, right? So the effect from that point of view will not be then also different. And I think that another reason that we could put forward is that, I think we are lacking on the whole level from all stakeholders, right? From the government, from the policymakers, regulators, and even the ordinary people, we lack quite a will to do the change, right? We are generally, as a human being, we are afraid of doing things differently, right? So we are trying to keep the comfort, even though if that, as we saw from the global financial crisis, the comfort of financial world was not really comfort, right? It was mirage, sort of. So this is the same thing here, right? So we don't have enough will. We need to create this will and push for the agenda to change, and then we can expect, even different results if implemented.
Very good. I mean, I would love to see the results of that future research, because I think since you specialize on crisis, you were already studying the first financial crisis.
Let's hope we are not going to have another crisis soon. But I'm not that much. I mean, I hope for the best, of course. But given the current market movements, we might be into some kind of turbulences as well.
And so
but maybe we'll put that one aside.
Maybe we will be discussing the conclusions of another study after in a couple of years.
We'll see.
Yeah. But we will see. The thing is that in like overall, Sharia products sometimes are considered like more, less volatile and more secure for some reasons, and even some investors are using it for hedging to some extent. And I wanted to ask you, like, there's still not a lot of appetite for this kind of products in the conventional finance and for conventional investors. And what else do you need? Do you think is needed to grow this appetite in for hedging and even beyond it for this kind of product?
Beyond that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Indeed. To be honest, again, like there are a number of reasons, right? Because as you said, for the countries, the Westerner will look from these countries like they are like Muslim majority, they are pretty much the same. Middle East is pretty much the same, right? So the same thing when we say about Sharia compliant or Islamic finance, they sometimes this perception that we have from the media, from everything, may be like ruining the true pictures of that one. So I believe that in general, for the biggest problems that humanity is facing throughout the history is usually because of the lack of knowledge, right? Lack of awareness. So what we need to improve this situation, like to improve the appetite for Sharia product, I guess we need to increase the awareness, understanding of Sharia principle, Islamic finance, to portray to the people, actually, it's not the terrorist financing, right? Right now, if you go to the, market or somewhere on the street and do the interview and think about, like, ask anyone general question about Islamic finance, and I'm not saying just about, here, even in some Muslim countries, they would not be really able to give you some kind of reasonable answer. So that's something that we need to increase, and I hope that this kind of webinars and similar things can help extend to those interested to find out what Islamic finance is. Next one is, of course, I would say the regulatory framework. in many cases, we don't have a regulatory framework. And unfortunately, this is case even with the Muslim countries, right? Not to mention the Western countries. And many times, we don't know what to do. Investors are not aware, except maybe some countries in Europe, like UK, like, who else like did some, but UK is the primarily like the one to some extent, Luxembourg did some kind of adjustment. We have Hong Kong, Singapore, and these some countries that are basically attracting the investment, and they're playing. So we can learn from them and see what we can do. Another thing is product innovation. Like we are many times talking, when we are talking about investor, we are talking about sophisticated investment, right? And in that ground, Sharia compliant products may be like tricky to structure in sense, and maybe like sometimes maybe even maybe expensive because of the procedures and everything, and may not be interested for the investor in the first place. So we need to come up with sort of the product innovation that will be like helpful to cater for all these needs. Definitely, we need also collaboration, partnership. And what I mean is the government to government, non-governmental international, this intergovernmental organization, sort of like Edib, Islamic Development Bank, IFSB, IOFI, together with the governments of the Muslim countries, together with the Western countries, and IMF, for example. I mean, IMF is already doing, and they have like, they are publishing everything, but we need to improve this one, to portray, to present, to do some kind of workshop and partnership together, investment, make some kind of investment together, in order to promote these things. But of course, this is also difficult sometimes because of the transparency and standardization. I remember back in 2011, I was writing one of the first papers, short papers, that I was calling for standardization. What we have in Islamic finance many times, we have like contract like murabaha, cost plus financing, or musharaka, partnership. But, different institutions, they have different documents, right? And many times we don't really know how that is implemented. It is not available to the public, and they are skeptical about the way how it is done and sort of. So I was thinking like, why don't we have some sort of standardization? And many argue with we don't need standardization because Sharia is so broad, we don't need such things and so on. But I'm not saying fixing everything right now. We can have like murabaha with the like 4 or 5 variations. And at least when you say, okay, we are using this sort of the contract and it is available to the people, and we don't need to reinvent the wheels, because every financial institution, Islamic financial institution, is coming with its own documents, with its own products. And sometimes it's like, costly and waste of time, and may bring some kind of, skeptic thinking about the market. I mean, from the market participant. Market infrastructure is definitely something that is needed, right? In many even Muslim countries, like I said, we don't have it, not to mention the Western countries, right? If you want to try to implement or do some things. But one good thing is that, responsible ethical investment is something that is part and parcel of Islamic finance. So this is something that we can benefit if we can champion this, right? In a sense, in true sense, we provide the products and provide the investment opportunities that will be like, inclined with this one. And that would something that would be helping, that will help Islamic finance to promote further. Of course, we need more research, thought leadership from the top, like I said, from these financial institutions, from the governments in general, initiatives. I believe strongly, not because, I've been in Malaysia studying over there, but I know what the government has done completely, the whole system, what they have done. So we can learn from them. We can basically try, we don't need to reinvent, but basically take whatever is the best over there and try to implement and work from there, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's so many things. Small changes need to take place, right? And some.
Yeah, but we need to start from somewhere.
Definitely. For those like us that believe that Islamic finance can add value and can create some synergies with the conventional finance world, that's one of the roles actually of these talks and this the work that we're doing is to trying to promote and increase awareness about what is there and the potential that is, even if we still need a lot of changes, and even if it's Islamic finance in something that still is developing even in Islamic countries, right? So
yeah.
Indeed. let's say like now taking a step back from the financial markets and looking at overall at the economy, like setting up as a conclusion on the light that of your research for on this last research on the research of the previous economic crisis, like to what extent do you see these economies with developed Sharia markets are behaving really differently to those in with conventional finance? Would you?
Yeah, I mean, in brief, I think that it's all rolls down to the Sharia compliance or Sharia principles, right? The main reason why, they are behaving differently, or to provide some kind of difference, at least in these countries that are, pretty much involved in Islamic finance, is because of these principles of Sharia. For example, financial products that are structured based on Sharia compliant, they have certain procedures, certain, underlying principles that are, automatically protected for some, issues. I remember in particular, like the biggest problem of, global financial crisis were the like sort of derivatives, collateralized debt obligation, credit default swaps, which, thank God, were not that much developed or extended in Islamic finance. And that is something that, was like a best thing for Islamic finance at that point of time, and save it from that. So this linkage between the real estate, real economy and Islamic finance is something that is really adding value. At the same time, ethical consideration, right? So there is no sort of, at least minimize sort of gambling or these kind of, playing around, right? We are trying everything to bring together to the real economy, to the real value. Otherwise, you cannot invest it from Sharia point of view, right? And of course, that links to the risk management, because you cannot just go and, speculate in the market. You cannot just play around. So you are restricted sort of, and playing more safer. So that in that sense, you are less exposed to the shocks and all these things that are happening. And once we have this regulatory framework, like I mentioned in Malaysia and some other Muslim countries, Muslim majority countries, right? They are helping, they are guiding, they are restricting these formation, and that's how they are differ basically from. They are not allowed to enter into certain industry. They are not allowed to expose themselves. They have certain rules and regulation on their own that we need to apply. And of course, the good thing is that investor base is not just limited to the Muslims, right? Because there are many non-Muslim investors who are trying to diversify, not because not because of the religious reasons, right? Because for them it's not the issue, but they see the benefits for their portfolio. So there are differences, but of course, again, those may not be directly available or extracted from the current markets, because of we don't have like really market that is dominated by the Islamic finance in that sense, right?
Good. I thank you very much. We are getting a bit by the end of our session today, but I have a couple of questions or comments from. So maybe let me just read it for you.
Sorry.
We can. I know it's difficult sometimes to respond these kind of questions live, anyways, but. Like Mr. Mushtaq here is saying like, okay, like taking in mind that the more important Islamic financial markets are Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and the United Arab Emirates, and they take a biggest share of the sector.
Indeed.
Like, how do you think? Like, do you think that it could be like another approach to see the impact from a market segment point of view, the Sukuk market, resilience, deposits, directions of financing, and so on?
Yeah, I would agree, definitely. To be honest with you, when we published this paper, the reviewers were asking, why are you selecting only these countries? This is always the issue. Why you select this one? Why you don't select that one? So I believe that's good comment. Maybe we can do another study just on these particular couple, 2, 3, and go more deeply, and maybe take another look for Sukuk base, because these countries are the majority, issuer of the Sukuk. This could be possible, like new topic for explore to explore, and I don't know what results will be revealing. We can maybe look later on.
Yeah. Another comment from Mr. Mushtaq, he says he's highlighting like what do you think? Like, if you think that the Islamic finance policy and enabling legislation and regulatory framework is probably even more important than any other. That without this, the market cannot flourish. Like Saudi Arabia, for instance, is consulting on a new banking law, and there is no mention of a separate dedicated Islamic banking law. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, my personal view, definitely, like, because I believe in Islamic finance and being a Muslim as well, right? And believing on the principles and studying even conventional finance, I am 100% sure that we need to implement these things, and we need the Islamic financial policies and regulations. However, like I said, this is something that sometimes, there is no enough will, there is no, from those who are making the policy, which doesn't mean that, sometimes, it's not up to them, or, they don't have like capacity to do that, or they don't see the benefit. Again, this is something that we need to work together. We need to convince, we need to do more research, convey the message, sit down with these people, promote more, and try to influence. I mean, we need to learn, at least from the West. I believe that we need to have the lobbies, which we don't have in the Muslim world, unfortunately. Lobbies for the good things, right? Not to get the job, right? To get the contract, or to get consultancy, or get big money. But we need to do some kind of, promotion of the good policies, promotion of the good ideas, and try to use our networks to reach to the people who are in power to make the changes.
Okay, I will. We're a bit ahead of them. Let's have two last questions that I already have on the list, and we will. Mr. Abdu here is asking, like, you did mention that Islamic banks did well during the pandemic and have stood through the test of time. Why can't global financial market regulators and policymakers imitate the same model used by Islamic finance to avoid a global financial crisis?
Well, I think I did mention, but we didn't go into details, right? I did mention that, that they performed quite the growth was very, very well, and they were quite resilient to the COVID-19 as well. The same thing that happened, during the global financial crisis. I did mention it briefly, so this is just correction. Why we cannot have global market regulators? I mean, this is something else, right? As I said, many of these regulators are not willing to do that, or they are afraid, sort of, because they have their voting, people behind them, and I mean, just look what happens, when we are trying to promote Islamic finance in some of the Western countries, like, there are riots, or there are sort of, NGOs calling, well, we don't want a terrorist financing or things like that. So, I mean, we need to first prepare the conditions, right? And to be honest with you, it is really, for me, it is unfair to go and ask, for example, Spanish government to come up with the Islamic finance regulations when half of the Muslim countries don't have any of those regulations, right? So we need to first make ourselves, properly, and show by the example, and then we can expect, and export these ideas to the new markets and new people.
Thank you very much. We're going to close the session with this last question from Mr. Jose Ramon, and he's asking, how would you characterize risk sharing of Islamic banking during COVID? In Western countries, MOUs have been signed to introduce risk sharing. Has it been easier in Islamic banks?
Well, that's something that I said, we still don't have, briefly I said, like, we still don't have the true nature. Many pioneers, and many, those advocates of Islamic finance, they're calling for the risk sharing. Again, unfortunately, we don't have it as much as we want. And one of the main reasons, again, I would come because, the banks are not meant to be in the first place risk sharing, right? And I would quote my friend, who is now CEO of CIMB Islamic Bank, Rafa Hanif. I remember a long time when we were discussing, he said, look, when he was the CEO of HSBC Amana, he was saying, look, I'm ready to go into the contract of risk sharing, but the problem is that no one wants to do it from the customer's point of view. Why? It's simple as that. If you have a good project, right, why would you share like 50-50 or 30% of your profit with the bank when you can basically borrow the money at 3 or 5%, right? So what would happen is basically there is a adverse selection, right? Only those who are not sure about their projects, right, would come and share the share profit with you without, because they are not losing that much, or they are losing less than when they borrow the money. So what it means is that, we don't have a playing ground. There is no regulation. Even in the most leading, markets, like, you can't really implement the risk sharing in true sense. So we need to come up with these ideas. We need to restructure. And that is something I believe that we had good opportunity after the global financial crisis, right? Because the problem was that we were dealing from the real economy. So if we come back, if we link with the real economy, with the true performance, with the true risk sharing, I believe that we will have less impact on the financial world, less impact on the economies as a whole, and there will be less intervention from the government that we are seeing right now, which is again affecting, and who's paying the highest price? Basically ordinary people. So I don't see that the risk sharing will be implemented really soon unless we significantly change the way how our financial markets are working, and especially the banks, right?
Okay. Well, I think with this, we are going to close the session. We don't want to steal more of your time, but
no worries.
Really, thank you so much. I mean, it's been really insightful, and it's been a pleasure to read more about this and get your opinions on many different topics. So thank you very much, and thank you to all the people that connected here today. As you know, we are recording the session, and it will be published soon, so it will be available to everyone if you can share it. Thank you very much. Well, we have they are asking us for one last question, please.
I don't mind. If you have time, I'm okay.
Let's see if okay, it's considering Islamic finance products such as Musharaka and Mudaraba are constrained by capital adequacy requirements by Basel because of the level of risk profile. What should Islamic regulators do about this? And it's actually a double question. Secondly, how does fractional reserve banking affect the potential Islamic finance?
Okay, I'll try to be quickly. That's the reason I said, implementing the risk sharing is almost like impossible, exactly because of what you are mentioning, capital adequacy requirement, and the nature of the banking right now, the rules. So if we want to implement this one, we would have to split these things into two, or make some kind of arrangement and provide sort of venue how we can implement this one. So this could be as a separate laws or separate regulatory framework that would help. I think that the good thing is actually, which I like, that especially after the global financial crisis, and I wrote a couple of the papers on the Lawrence Kotlikov wrote the book after the global financial crisis on limited purpose banking. And I really like it, because when I was reading that one, it's exactly like, Islamic finance in place. So he was calling let's have the mutual funds instead of banks, right? And the mutual funds will be each mutual funds will deal only with those things. So if we have the investment mutual fund, that's investment, and you are risking your money. It's not the bank, but you are choosing where to invest. And that mutual fund, for example, only invest in real estate. So when you are investing in that mutual funds, you know where your money goes. And I like it very much, because that's the basically risk sharing. That's the whole idea. And this model, to be honest with you, it's addressing also the fractional reserve banking sector, banking, idea, which we have, right? And I think that's the reason that we might look for but current state, again, that's the reason why I keep on saying, and if you refer back to what I was saying, the difference in the reaction will not be much different, because we are guided or limited by the regulatory framework that we are working in, and that regulatory framework is based on the fractional reserve banking system. It is based on the capital adequacy system. So reaction might be slightly here and there, but not in a full sense.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now we don't have more time for questions, But really, if you have more questions, you can also send us a question to our CF website, to our email, and we will put you in contact with Dr. Edib if you are available. And then, let's keep the discussion from here. Thank you
so much. Thank you, everyone, for interesting questions and everything. I hope it was beneficial, and hope to see you again, inshallah.
It was excellent. Hope to see you soon, inshallah. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Goodbye.
to everyone connected today. Bye-bye.
Bye.